All right, so we're here to talk about the CI/CD director dashboard work that Rayana has put together. We're diving into some of the jobs to be done related to interactions with metrics on this dashboard.
Yeah, I'm going to share my screen that since we are recording this now, it will be cool to see the Figma view. I think that's it, yeah? I'm sharing the right screen now. Cool. And yeah, we have this this Figma project with pretty much all design information that we collected so far for the CI/CD dashboard. And like what Jackie mentioned, um, when we look at let me zoom in a little bit more. When we look at the jobs to be done for the dashboards, I think one of my main questions is how far do we want to go with the customization, and what are the opportunities that we can already identify for the CI/CD dashboard that one already exists in different dashboards and that we can incorporate easily depending on UX pattern, components, etc. And two, which of these extra functionalities can we build, can we iterate on? Right. So for example, when I look at, let me just change the view here. When I look at these different dashboards and these different views that we have across GitLab, we have different ways to display and consume the data. And that's one of the things I was discussing with Nadia last week, is that do we have like user insights or numbers around adoption and how users are interacting with these dashboards? Yeah. Because right now, what I found from my from this discovery, from this design exploration, and that's what I try to do here, looking at those three main dashboard views that we have at the group level, is that they really provide different context, of course, in different metrics, but also that you interact with them completely differently. And I think that's going to be important for us to, of course, align with other designers, but also to decide which direction we want to choose to standardize our dashboard views for CI/CD. Hi, Lorie.
Okay, so this is super helpful for me. I'm going to ping John Mason inside of the G Manage Analytics channel, and I've CC'd you on it so that we can see if there's any data on this. I think this is a little overwhelming for me insofar as my initial gut and my initial priority, the thing I'm triaging, is the pain customers are feeling when they're managing things across a group. So when they have multiple projects and they're trying to get each of the project level metrics just a step higher. So that the immediate pain that I'm trying to triage is a global pain, and all of these like little pieces that we're looking at are very user centric focuses. So I'm trying to get my head out of that global pain of like solving by giving them just the visibility across multiple projects and get into this to this granular perspective. So in my past life, users always told me that the actionability of a dashboard was that they wanted to be able to click on a particular data point, they wanted to drill into it. And then the second priority was to, right. And the second priority was to filter the subset. Not necessarily order, but filter. So restrict my view by 3 dimensions: time, container, which is a generic term for project in this case. It could be a person, an individual. A container is just a representation of how things get bucketed in your relational database. So for our case, it would be, we want to filter on date range and we want to filter on project. And then we can expand that to include maybe environments or other kinds of things. But that's my initial, like, that's all that I've processed up until right now. So there's, of course, like, I've spent 4 years developing dashboards and intricate interactions in those dashboards. And that was my full-time job. So I'm a little anxious in that with the CI/CD director dashboard, in our attempt to create a standard that we get lost on the problem that we're trying to solve for, because there's a whole other team that's responsible for curating the end state. So I want to keep that in mind as we think about these interactions, as we think about the maturity of experience we're expecting a user to have with the CI/CD director dashboard, so that we don't go down a path that isn't really ours, right?
Yeah, I agree. It's a bigger problem to solve. And that's why while I was, especially when I'm working with UI, I had to, that's the way I feel now, is that we have to make a conscious decisions about which direction that we're going. And it would be ideal if we could do that at this point, right? Because, for example, there are, when I look at, especially this version, this is the group analytics dashboard. They really just spit the graph on the page, right? And that's, I'm going to show the proposals that I put here, and what I learned by navigating through all these dashboards is that, yeah, that definitely looks like the low-hanging fruit. But I want to open like the conversation for how much effort would it be to, instead of putting all these data points and work on all these graphs components that we don't have yet on pajamas. Instead of that, we could say, I don't know, allocate some time to look at the dashboard in a more holistic way, leveraging from the work that other teams are already doing. Does that make sense? I think that my head is
Repeat back what I think I heard. So your goal is to accomplish the problem while still thinking systemically about pajamas implementation. Is that right? Okay.
Yeah, and also, yeah, because I see a lot of other designers, for example, doing experimentations. And for example, when I look at security dashboard, I'm not sure if you're super familiar with the state of this this dashboard, Lorie, and if you participated from research. But when I look at it, I know that this is new. Look and feel, right? I'm not talking about the look and feel is new, and you can see the differences in UI compared to this dashboard. So at this point, when putting together the vision, I think I need to take like 3 steps back to identify what is the source of truth. And I think that's also where, when I think about how we're going to implement this, is that we need to be a little bit careful so that engineers can, yeah, use the right components. And that if we decide to, for example, move from a view that just resembles this, where you see one metric at a time, right? Because here you go to this drop down, select, and it changes the whole view, versus building a dashboard.
Right.
How much effort would that be in the future, or if we want to build, yeah, something like that from the beginning?
So we'll want to build something like this from the beginning, the value stream analytics.
Yeah, I yes. 13 years of doing dashboards, yes. Because just giving them the analytics is like, okay, well, this is great, but I need to do stuff with this thing. I need to dive into it. I need to export that out and give it to somebody else, or create another dashboard from that dashboard and give it to my CEO. Like, there's interactions that they have to do. And if we don't give that to them, the adoption won't be there.
Well, there's a difference between reporting and analytics too. So what you're seeing in the issue page count, that's a report. Yes. There isn't anything packaged that tells you what to consume. The value stream analytics though says, hey, this is your cycle time, this is your consumption, and it gives you a benchmark to then act from within. So that's what we want to package our data, and we want to make it consumable. So that's the biggest difference I think that you'll see with our CI/CD dashboard and the other reports that people are generating, because people are generating reports. Even the security thing, that other dashboard is just a report view, because it doesn't show you. I mean, this vulnerabilities over time is its own little dashboard where you have severity and then the growth over time. So like that's a mini dashboard inside this greater dashboard. But like that's the kind of chunk of information that you want to display. You want to consume, package, and distribute. That's probably less helpful, because that means that we will be implementing non-pajamas approved components initially, because no one has been building out these kinds of components, because people are thinking about reports first rather than analytics. And the second part of it is the amount of time that it'll take for us to instrument that in addition to pajamas could mean that we spend 2 years building out the CI/CD dashboard. And that's a reality that we'll have to like accept and love and embrace as we go down this path.
I was just gonna say, I wonder if we can get other people down this path of doing the same thing, then they can also work on components and then we can all consume them.
I think that especially when it comes to the analytics components, the graphs, there are a lot of designers, a lot of teams involved in different levels. So that it would be definitely smart if we could, just use them and then plan our deliverables on top of that.
Which I think is what Nick Post is trying to do, right? Yeah. When he had that like one meeting where we all powwowed around this project, I just think that maybe there's something more thoughtfully that we can do. Whether it's how we break down the issue or how we identify the components, I'm not sure. I don't know if the juice is going to be worth the squeeze in implementing a pajamas component from solving the problem for our customer. And that's what's giving me the heartburn right now, is that I want to say, yes, Rayana, we'll implement every pajamas component thing that we can, knowing that the problem that we're going to solve with the CI/CD dashboard, even if it's ugly as sin, will be amazing, right? It'll be so valuable for them to be able to see those insights, even though it doesn't match our style.
Yeah. So that's exactly linking to my next point. So I'm just going to show you here. This is a not final, but quick and dirty prototype based on your your low fidelity prototype, Jackie. So how
did you create this from my POS dashboard in Google Docs? Oh my God, Rayana, this is so beautiful.
No, I'm glad that you had I could work on top of your assets, because then it's well, I have a lot of questions. You see my post-its here. I also discussed this briefly with Nadia last week, and I think my main question right now is actually related to this point. Let me see if I can zoom in to what I wrote here. In looking at the pajamas components, because you mentioned just now that building more pajamas components, etc. I think this is not really the problem for us, because there are enough graphs, there are enough analytics components, navigation components, whatever. If we're going to fix them to make them look nice, that's a different discussion. But I think we should spend a bit of time discussing and deciding which graphs we're going to use for each metric, because that's one of the things I don't see documented anywhere in pajamas. And we know that when you choose the wrong interface and the wrong graph, then people cannot consume the data correctly.
So one thing I did learn before is that people do want to see data displayed differently at their own fingertips. So for example, I may want to see a bar chart like this, but I also may want to see a time series over time, or I may want to view it as a pie chart, all in the same experience. So having that toggle ability is important. I think for obviously our MVC will be like, what's the best way to display this information? And I think we should spend more time on that. You're 100% right, because there's certain things like the pipelines failed versus passed over time. That will be really well represented in a stacked bar chart versus releases per project. You should have 2 lines. One that's the projects that are open and active versus releases that are open and active, because then you're comparing the two and you get to see the relationships. And if you notice that one of your projects has a whole lot of releases because they're implementing CD versus another project that doesn't have any releases because they're not doing CD, they're only releasing quarterly, whatever it is, then you can compare that at a glance. But in our issue that we have, the identify components, do you feel like that's an appropriate place to discuss this? Where do you want to have that conversation? Because we can have it here in the Figma, but where do you want to talk about this?
I'm muted.
I don't want to talk about it actually, Jackie, thanks.
No, let's discuss in the issue. Of course, we can do design review here, but I think it's also best if other people can access the information there. And that's a great point, because we can look at the metrics that we want to display, comparing then and linking that to the components that we already identified, and see this component will be used to show this specific type of data.
Totally.
Because there are so many options, and that's what I was impressed when I did that triage and look at pajamas. I thought it would be like 3-4 different type of graphs. There's a whole library, and even like with this capabilities of, you can zoom in, zoom out,
I saw that.
a lot of stuff. So that's pretty exciting. The adjustments on look and feel, I think we can definitely do later and iterate as we go.
And that might be where we call them UX stat too, Rayana, because given that we've had like our, what you would call it, our OKR or our goals to be burning down UX stat, say that we implement this in 13.4 and you spin off 5 different UX stat issues to style these different charts, then I can prioritize them and justify the investment in this UX stat because it doesn't match the UI finish that we're wanting to do. Just as a thought for like, how can we make sure that this doesn't get lost? Because I do feel my inner product manager wanting to forsake style for function. And we shouldn't do that, because the design experience and seamlessness of this persona is going to be impacted by the way that they feel when they're toggling between dashboards. And although I know that my product manager side is like, no, I want to build more cool things. So we need to keep that in check. And if there's a way that we can identify these UI polish, UX stat, prioritize them accordingly, we'll do that.
That'll be awesome. And I think we'll also, if we can make this list, we can also help other teams to pick up those tasks, because why not, right? Everyone will benefit. So let me quickly go over these 3 prototypes. They're slightly different, and also based on the screens that we saw for the analytics, the security, the group dashboards. So this one is built on top of the analytics view, so many. And indeed shows all the information, Jackie, like what your low fidelity prototype had. And then a couple of thoughts, also based on my experience looking at the current product, some concerns on this. I'm going to start with the concerns, because why not? Loading time is awful. It's so bad when you have these huge dashboards, and the security dashboard loads like 100 of lines in a table once you land in that page. So that's one of the things for us to consider, that the more data we want to display here, the heavier this thing will get. And I think that's also important for us to consider, like what you mentioned, giving people the ability to select, filter, show exactly what they want, rather than showing all these data points in the UI.
I wonder if this will change with our GraphQL implementation, because querying may have lazy loading or something. But that's what CRAS is looking at for aggregating metrics from the project to the group level. That should be some sort of performance index that we do. Maybe we already have, like, maybe the latency is also not real time. Maybe it gets updated and then it's just stagnant initially, until we can figure out like what's the right refresh rate. And then of course we can say that it doesn't refresh, and then you have to manually refresh it, which would allow us to, have a static dashboard that gets manually refreshed. That might be an option too. So I love that that's what you're thinking. We'll have Kraz look at the aggregating of project metrics and get his perspectives too on that.
Yeah, that would be awesome to know what were the possibilities there. Because when I looked at this this view, right, and I just put some UI elements here based on, as I said, your prototypes, but also things that we already have in the UI. So historical versus upcoming release, we do have this type of bar graph with the comparison, so that will be super cool. These we also have components for like this just one data point. They call like a text graph, I don't know. And here for pipelines, I was thinking that since you want to see display the last 5 pass and last 5 fail pipelines,
I love that.
Interesting to bring similar like UI, right? The same language that you have on other pages here. So here's just a screenshot. I didn't polish anything, but I was wondering what information is actually relevant here. Like what granularity we want to display, but also what actions the user we want to take from this view.
Yeah, so from the pipeline view, people typically want to drill into the project from that view. So we'll want an easy way to like see the project and click into it and take it to that job. People want to be able to see like where these pipelines have failed. So more like on the failed pipeline side, which job did they fail at? We might want to tie together the environment for last passed and failed pipeline. So like what environment is it deploying to? Because that would give people less job focused and more about launching them into the dashboard view for environments, which is a great cross-linking opportunity for us.
Awesome. Dashboard. And that's exactly the second point here. Where we want to take users, because yeah, we can take them to all these different pages, right? Because here, if you click specifically in this link, you probably just go to the commit, and then here you go to the user profile. But I think it would be nice for us to have that connection between the environments dashboard. So once we polish that view, we have one single storyline.
Yes.
There.
Yes.
Ah, so emotional.
I know, it's such a cool thing though to see this coming to reality. I love it.
So this was the first version, and again, it's merely based on the other dashboard. I didn't add here any like filtering, editing capabilities. This is actually a little bit down here.
Yeah.
That the dashboard, they have this. So if you want, for example, export, edit, so let users configure. These are all components and functionalities that we can reuse from different dashboards.
And we'll also probably in the first MVC make all of this available via API. So that might be something for me to consider and build issues to, because people will likely be pulling this kind of data into their own data warehouse and redisplaying it. So it's more like the raw data that people are going to care about in addition to the visualization. Our end state will be that we want to drive people to come to this page to manage their stuff, but there might be a place where they're not managing those kinds of actions inside of GitLab. So here's how I could see that being tiered up. We could say that this dashboard is available via API and UI in Ultimate, and in Premium, it's only available in the UI. And that way we're driving value for people who have external data warehouse systems in the Ultimate tier.
That's exactly interesting, because I think I have a note here from Nadia. She mentioned something a bit related. I'll try.
I think it's next to your timestamp. I saw her name, or not timestamp. The filtering by year. Yeah, there you go, right there.
Exactly that. What she said. That's one of the big learnings from her past life. Is that it didn't really need that much functionality in UI. There was a lot of work on the API, but then you'll be nice. It's good to have the ability to export and then do whatever you want with that data in a different platform.
Right.
Coolio. And then, okay, so the differences now are really like in interaction in UI. Oops, sorry about the Zoom. So this one, you see everything is in one page. And the next one follows a little bit that model of you click here, you have a drop down, and then if you select, for example, pipeline dashboard or pipelines insights, it changes the view. So it reloads that specific area. This is a very common pattern across GitLab. So if you go to all this, like in analytics, all these dashboards, they are like that. I find it, I have my concerns, of course. I find the context switching a bit odd. You're not really like comparing all the data, you're not seeing the whole picture.
Yeah.
And also the discoverability of this content, right? So you really need to be, in a way, familiar with this view, with this interaction, to know that when you land on CI/CD Insights or CI/CD Group Dashboard, page it here, the name is easy to define, that you come up with, you access more data. But then again, loading time, much better.
So here's a couple of initial thoughts. I'll say that I'm a release manager and I am not on the engineering team. So I'm not embedded in the engineers. I don't really have a lot of context into what they're working on, but I want to be able to see the health of all the releases and related activity that the engineers are doing across all the projects that I manage as release manager. Seeing a single view, which I can scroll through and observe that information and triage it appropriately, is much easier than being able to toggle between a pick list, because I don't have context into releases, the relationship between a release and a potential pipeline, right? Mm-hmm. So being able to understand that like this release is targeted to this environment and this pipeline just released this environment in a single snap is way more actionable than toggling between this releases view and the pipeline view.
I agree with you. But then again, this is there in the product. And that's like another question, like from my conversation with Nadia, are we how people are using these dashboards? Are they actually, getting the value from these interactions? Because it might be that, for example, like I think this one, like in this dashboard, that you have the ability to, I think this one, to the CI file,
right?
Just choose what you want to see and remove items from your view, right? You can reorder, for example, this data, you can do a bunch of things. And because of that, it's okay to have things filtered. Here, for example, they have different steps.
Totally. Like this is a really great view. This whole value stream analytics view is actionable. It's the ideal analytics platform. So whatever we could highly consider modeling our MVC off of some of the way this is designed and some of the interactions that are exposed, given that the drop-down pick list option really wouldn't be useful for a persona who's working across multiple projects without context into those projects.
Mm-hmm. Awesome, that's great feedback. So this one, we agree, it's a bit, and then this one I was playing around a little bit with, still navigation, right? If we had to go that direction, I think a drop down is a bit 1998. We could explore, for example.
I like this tabs. I like that. That's if we have a loading latency issue, the tabs I think would be a better option. Great thinking there. Yeah.
You know exactly what you get, right? You know that what to expect here from the hand pipelines, etc. But then again, I agree with you. This gives a feeling of like dashboarding, right? The reporting and the versus analytics. And then I think next steps for me is maybe to collect all this feedback and then see what components or what could we potentially use for this.
I love that.
Because the next things, like this one, what did I want to say? Sorry. Sorry, I forgot. I tried to improv and then I forgot what I was going to say.
No, you're good.
Whatever. I mean, yes, this is the part. From your prototypes, and also from the description of the issue, this part, right, the insights on pipelines and these insights on the releases, they look like just static data. And do you see users being taken somewhere from, this pipelines or acting, like how they would act on top of this information?
So the way I envisioned it is that they would look at the insights and then they would act on the drill down information below. So being able to see like the time trend and then the last updated releases, like that's their drill down effectually. It's a cheap way to do it, right? Because they're not needing to click into this 25% projects with pages with releases and then it populates a separate page with projects and releases. That's a couple ways you can do those interactions. Instead of cross-linking into an existing dashboard, it'll cross-link into a page that's just populated with that data, right? So that's what I was trying to accomplish with these different graphics was you have your static information and then you can drill down into this subsequent sections. But that might be that elevation might be jarring for some.
Yeah. I think it'll be interesting, like what you say in the future, 16% fail pipeline, and you can change that visualization, right? You can see in a graph, you can see, how do you call it, in the pizza thingy.
Yeah, the pie chart, the pizza, the pizza chart. That's what I'm going to call it from here on out. That's my pizza chart.
Translation. Awesome. And I think the last main point that I want to discuss is, of course, where this thing is going to live, right? Right now, I think in your description, we talked about having like in the group overview and then having CI/CD dashboard. But again, we have analytics here, and also we have, well, this doesn't really matter because it's at the instance level, the other dashboards, like the security dashboards.
I could see it replacing, like, you know how we have the environments dashboard up top? I could see this replacing the environments dashboard view, and then we tab from releases to environments to, you know, like, I could see this being at the highest level rather than nested inside the group. But
I think this is, I put this as a note here somewhere. This is one of the things I would like to validate. Maybe we can do through prototyping.
Yeah.
In a way, we can move this thing around inside the product, but it feels like it's such an important thing in the workflow for these users, right, that if you have to go to the group level to then click a menu and see that, it will be awesome to, yeah.
I agree with you on that. Yeah.
And I think that was it. Let me see I bought a whiteboard, so now I can do this.
Ooh, you have nice handwriting, like you have cool characters.
So that was it.
All right, perfect. I'm gonna stop recording.